By now you know that there is a new UFC light heavyweight champion. By now you know his name is Magomed Ankalaev, or as the kids are calling him these days, Big Ank. I didn't know that. I didn't catch that memo, but it happened. It is a thing, and they're running with it. And I don't hate it. Maybe it's like when the kids call me Unk. I don't know, but it's something, and it's something to grab onto. Now he beat Alex Pereira on Saturday. This is a fight that really the UFC did not want to make. They did everything in their power not to make it, but at one point it became inevitable. He had to fight. This is the way sport goes. This is the way a proper fighting league, quote unquote, should conduct itself. And the guy who had the longest winning streak, the guy who had beaten all the people put in front of him, except for that one draw against Jan Blachowicz, that guy needed to fight for the belt. And we said last week that this felt like the last big test for Alex Pereira before he really cashes in. And does he cash in against the likes of John Jones, who was campaigning to fight him back in November? Does he cash in against the likes of Tom Aspinall? Does he cash in against the likes of Alexander Usyk? Does he cash in based simply on the premise that he could become the first three-weight world champion in UFC history, 85, 205, and 265? It felt like if he gets by this test, which a lot of people thought would be his toughest, against a guy who has a skill set that a lot of people think would be his kryptonite, the wrestling, the grappling, and maybe not the most popular fighter in the UFC, but a very talented and durable fighter. If he got by that test, a massive pot of gold awaits him. And he was the underdog going into the fight. And we also talked about the UFC having a star problem and how it would be a disaster, a nightmare for them to a degree if their big dog, they're honestly right now, as far as active fighters are concerned, their most popular fighter loses against a not so popular fighter. I was trying to think of a comparison. RDA, Anthony Pettis, I'm not quite sure. Juliana Amanda Nunes, no. Matt Serra, GSP, maybe to a degree, but I don't know if there's ever been this big of a gap between the new champion and the old champion in terms of popularity. Now, this isn't just a popularity contest. This isn't WWE. You have to put on the fights. May the best man win. And as I said last week, I believe to Ade, the UFC is not waking up on this Monday saying the sky is falling. However, I will say in a negotiation year with the likes of ESPN, and let's not even get into the disaster that was ESPN Plus on Saturday, and now they're just playing UFC 313 for everyone for free. I'm sure that doesn't help the pockets at all, but it was an absolute disaster. I can't watch ESPN Plus on my phone for more than 2 minutes without it crashing. I tried to rewatch the main event this morning, and I got through it, but I swear to God, it was 2 to 2.5 minutes, and then I would have to restart it, go to the point. It's an absolute nightmare of an app. It's a disaster. And Saturday, the shit hit the fan because no one could buy the pay-per-view, and they probably lost a lot of money. Now, I heard a lot of people say that the UFC was going to be mad about this. The UFC has those pay-per-views bought and paid for. ESPN lost money, not the UFC. ESPN lost money. But still, you want those numbers to be high. You're in a negotiation year, and you want to have champions like Alex Pereira leading the way. You want to have those big dogs. You want to have those big fights on the horizon that you can sell people on the prospect of it. It's one of the reasons why I think Jones Aspinall actually happens this year, as opposed to if it was trying to get done 2 years ago, and Ngannou Jones trying to get done 2 years ago, because they have to make these fights happen right now in this little period where they're trying to sell, a multi-billion-dollar deal to a provider or two. And so the sky isn't falling, but life is a little better when you have Alex Pereira as champion. In the end, Magomed Ankalaev is your champion. And we were debating after the show, myself, Rick, GC, what will Pereira do? Well, he has confirmed in the aftermath that he wants to run it back, and Dana White himself said he wants to run it back. We can debate whether this was good or bad for John Jones and Tom Aspinall. We will get into all of that in a moment. But I say all of this because I need to offer an apology. I need to offer a two-pronged apology. As I just mentioned, I watched the fight. On Saturday, in the very bleary-eyed hour of 1:15 a.m. when we're doing the post-show, I said that I thought Alex Pereira won the fight 3 rounds to 2, 48-47. I said that I scored round 1, 3, and 5 for Alex Pereira, 2 and 4 for Magomed Ankalaev, and I felt like 1 through 4 were quite easy to score, excuse me, 1, 2, 4, and 5 were easy to score. 3 was the swing round. 3 was the toughest round. I watched the fight again this morning. I made a mistake. Magomed Ankalaev, in my opinion, won that third round. And so with that, in my opinion, he's the rightful winner. Now, my opinion doesn't really matter, but I did say on the post-fight show that I thought it was 1-3-5 for Pereira. I rewatched it. I thought Ankalaev was way more aggressive, landed the bigger shots. It wasn't the most entertaining fight of all time. It was a lot of leg kicking and a lot of 1s and 2s. That was pretty much it. It felt like Alex Pereira never really quite got going, and that was probably because of the presence of Ankalaev and the threat of the takedown, although he was 0 for 12, I do believe, with takedowns. So we have to give Alex Pereira a ton of credit. His takedown defense was phenomenal, but he never really quite going. He was never his usual aggressive self. There were moments. The biggest shot was landed at the end of the second round when Ankalaev landed the big shot, and it looked like Pereira got rocked, and it looked like he kind of got saved by the bell, if we're being 100% honest. And maybe if he's fighting a true knockout artist, in that moment, maybe it's lights out. Maybe it's good night in that moment. He was always on the back foot. It always felt like he was retreating, and it just never quite felt like he could get going for whatever reason. Who knows? There could be a million of different reasons given. In the end, he never quite got going, and I don't feel as though he won the fight. Upon watching it again, I don't feel like he won the fight. I think Ankalaev won 1, 3, and 5. The other apology has to be, I think in retrospect on Saturday, in the post-show, I think we focused too much on Pereira. Pereira losing is the big story, but we do have to give Magomed Ankalaev his flowers. He went in there against one of the most feared strikers in recent UFC history, against one of the best fighters in recent UFC history, and he was able, for the most part, to exact his game plan and win the fight. Now, did it all work? No. He got stuffed 12 times. So it wasn't a perfect showing. It wasn't an A+, but he did the job, he got it done, and he's the champ. Fair and square. And so I do think that we need to acknowledge that. Now, the UFC is going to try to right this wrong. Make no mistake about it. And I think Pereira comes back better. I think he comes back stronger. I think he comes back fighting smarter. And I think he realizes what me worry. I don't need to worry about these takedowns. I stuffed all of them. I just need to be me. I've been in there against some of the very best strikers, and I need to enforce my game plan. I need to be the aggressive one on the front foot. And so we'll see how it all plays out. But ultimately, they're going to run this back. And the big winner, in addition to Magomed Ankalaev, to a degree, is Tom Aspinall, because now the threat of Alex Pereira against John Jones isn't there. I never thought it was a serious threat, but it's completely off the table because John can't say to the UFC, I want to fight Pereira. Pereira isn't the light heavyweight champion, and he's coming off a loss. And it wasn't the greatest performance. And now the bigger fight is, in my opinion, Jones versus Aspinall. That's the bigger fight. And so with that threat not being there, that's better for Tom Aspinall. Now, on the flip side of things, you could say, well, the UFC can't use Alex's leverage in the negotiations between John and Tom, and there really aren't negotiations left for Tom. Tom is in. John is the sticking point, and his number is the sticking point. Would people be okay with an Alex versus Tom fight? I think absolutely. It's a bigger fight than a Aspinall versus Gane. It's a bigger fight than an Aspinall versus Jailton Almeida, but it doesn't quite have the same type of juice there. So you can't really use it to the same degree as you were hoping to use it as a plan B if Jones versus Aspinall couldn't get done. I think it gets done, if only because I think they need for it to get done. They need that big fight this summer, this fall. There has been some talk of August here in the Northeast, but I think it could get pushed if they don't get it done, in the next, month or so. I think we'll get some clarity sooner rather than later. But now it's all very clear, in my opinion. You do Ankalaev versus Pereira too. This breathes a little bit of life into the light heavyweight division. You run it back. You've got Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree fighting in a month and a half. You certainly have Yuri Prochaska out there as still a very popular and worthy contender, and you do everything in your power to make Jones versus Aspinall happen. So there's a lot in the aftermath. There's a lot to break down. I'll bring in the guys in a second, but I do need to apologize off the bat. I scored it wrong. Third round to Ankalaev, and overall a pretty easy fight to score. Pereira wins the first. Ankalaev clearly wins the second after rocking him in the second round. Third to Ankalaev, fourth to Ankalaev, and fifth to Pereira. And as you can see, Mike Bell had that. Derek Cleary had that. Sal D'Amato gave the 5th to Ankalaev, which I very much disagree with. He had the 49-46. Overall, I give the pay-per-view, I don't know, a 6, 6.5, 6.2 out of 10. Mauricio Rufi's knockout was incredible. The prelims were all right. Nothing to really write home about. Ignacio Bahamondes had a great submission over Jalen Turner, and Jalen Turner, somewhat shockingly in the aftermath, retires. Didn't expect that. He's just 29 years young, and just a couple of years ago was considered one of the bright young stars in that division. And Gaethje Fiziev went toe-to-toe. These guys are magic. They're an incredible combination, and I'm sticking to that one. I think the judges got that one wrong. I think Fiziev won the third round. It was 1-1 going into the third. As you can see, everyone agrees. And I think that Fiziev was way more dominant in the first half of the third round. Everyone agrees on that with the body kicks and the punches to the body than Gaethje was. I think he finished strong, but I think if you look at the damage inflicted in the first half of that third round, I thought it was a lot more significant for Rafael Fiziev. In the end, Gaethje gets the win. In the aftermath, he says he doesn't want to fight Dustin Poirier. Beneil Dariush telling Submission Radio he's hearing it's Poirier versus Holloway. I'm starting to hear a similar tune, perhaps this summer. So let's see where Gaethje goes. Mauricio Rufi, by the way, saying he wants to fight Beneil Dariush in a main event fight later on this year. Don't hate that one. But that's as far as the big stories are concerned, the UFC 313 story. Let's bring in the boys, and let's react to all of this. Let's start with Pizzi, because we didn't hear from him on Saturday night. He was fast asleep. Did you even watch the pay-per-view? Because there were some accusations that you were sleeping before the show even started, I saw.
Oh, it's actually, this is all news to me as you were telling me here. I'm like, whoa, we lost? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Man, just give me a second to process this. But yeah, I did, of course, watch him as I do every single pay-per-view for the last 15 years. But I have to say, I think it's very big, the fact that this option has been taken off the table for John Jones. I think that was something that the Aspinall camp were very concerned about for a very long time. So I think that has pretty much opened the gate for that to be the only option for Jones at this point, which it always should have been. And I think around UFC London, there's going to be some conversations had, and hopefully we will hear, as you say, in the next month, we hear some positive news about that. I think it's the best thing that could have happened for this matchup that we all agreed was the most anticipated fight of 2025.
Pizzi, how do you score the main event?
I scored it for Ankalaev 2-3-4, 1-5 Pereira. I wasn't confident about the third round. I think everybody was the same. I think as we went away from the third round, when you're even scoring the fourth and fifth, you're like, it's all coming down to round 3. I can understand people having it for Pereira. What I don't understand is people calling it a robbery. A fight that close cannot be a robbery, no matter what the outcome is. You mentioned at the top that, I think you think Pereira comes away with this and says, well, look, I was in there. I stuffed all the takedowns. I think the same goes for Ankalaev. He stood in there for 25 minutes with the most dangerous striker in the UFC. He came out with his hand raised. That's going to be a huge confidence boost for him ahead of a rematch, I think.
Okay, so we never said robbery. It's interesting because we said.
Oh no, I did not accuse you guys.
No. But you say that word and it reminds me of some of the reaction that I saw to the post show. Just because in the immediate aftermath we say we disagree, it doesn't mean that it's a robbery. A robbery is very different than, hey, it came down to one round. Now I have since corrected my record and rewatched it, but I do believe. GC and Rick, when we spoke on Saturday, did we all think that Pereira won?
135 Pereira. Yeah. Have not watched it again. I tend to not go back and watch a lot of these because, as you said, I didn't think it was a robbery. I thought very reasonably somebody could score the third round for Magomed, and so I'm comfortable moving on in the new world where Magomed has won, and he won round 3. Pretty simple. There was no part of me that was like, I'm dying on this hill, Alex Pereira won round 3. No, I was pretty sure that it was very close, and if the majority of people had Magomed winning, totally comfortable moving on with that.
I just wanted to know,
well, not only that, 1,000%, but also once they started reading the judges' scorecards, I mean, maybe this was a signal that I actually internally scored it for Magomed Ankalaev. Well, once they said 49-46, I was like, oh, that's Ankalaev for sure. I mean, the 2 and the 4 to me were the clearest victorious rounds, and both those went to Magomed Ankalaev. So to get 1, 3, or 5, you had to suspect that was going to happen. I know 1 and 5 were for Pereira. They were still close rounds. It wasn't like incredibly decisive for him. And then 3, the toss-up round obviously went to Ankalaev as well.
That's a great point. Pereira had no definitive rounds, right? Any round Pereira won, he just narrowly edged it. 2 and 4 were definitively Magomed, and that tells the story of the fight. No issue. Thought Pereira won 1-3-5. If I watched it again, I'm sure I could be swayed on round 3. Rightful champion.
Did you watch the entire fight, Helwani back?
No, I didn't feel well.
I kind of did like a little fast forward thing without the anticipation of like a potential bomb getting landed or like a massive moment. It really was like it was a fairly boring fight. I mean, but Pereira, like just watching it back, it's just like the inactivity,
something off,
just like not going to the head at all. I think he landed like 12 head strikes the entire fight. Like he really just rolled with the calf kicks. It was a perplexing performance, but honestly, like you were saying in the beginning, Magomed Ankalaev to get it done landing 0 takedowns truly is incredible. And maybe it was the threat of the takedown that made Pereira tentative, but it really was a great performance by him.
There's a period in the middle of the 3rd round where it's just like calf kick, punch, calf kick, punch. Like it was so, and the crowd starts booing, which is very rare for a Pereira fight. It was just so like anticlimactic, right? And I don't think that we all thought that it would be a firefight, explosive action between the two of them, because Ankalaev just isn't that type of fighter. But to me, the story was obviously Pereira loses. He stuffs the takedowns. And that's why when I say I wanted to apologize to Ankalaev because we didn't focus enough on him, it's everything that Pereira didn't do, which really is the story, because it just didn't seem like himself. Now it's one of those classic things like, was that because of Ankalaev, or was that because of, the stuff that DC was talking about before? He's traveling too much. He's not taking it seriously. Who the hell knows? Dana was asked about it in the post-fight press conference as well. And, this stuff is always going to come up when there's, a bit of a, as you say, perplexing performance. Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.